One of the things he says is when you no longer work within the confines of the law, you lose the protection of the law, right?
Yeah. McLean Bible Church sues itself. Hi, I'm Mark.
Hey, I'm Scott. What's going on in McLean Bible Church?
Yeah, well, okay, it's maybe a little disingenuous to say that it's suing itself.
Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you hitting yourself?
Yeah.
Why are you hitting yourself?
But it's a group of 6 people, which includes current and former members, people that were involved in leadership and people in the congregation. So they're suing their own church because the church has made some questionable decisions with what to do with its money.
No,
And
say it ain't so,
I
Mark.
know.
That never happens.
But like more specifically, they gave $375,000 to the Southern Baptist Conference, which
375,000. Okay.
yeah, that's a lot of
30
money.
right,
That's,
okay.
Like my church, it would take many
Yeah.
years to get that amount of money. But it doesn't sound like a problem, right? Until you realize that they're
Right.
not part of the Southern Baptist Conference, and the church in their own constitution said that they are to remain non-denominational. And so you
Okay.
yeah, and so you have these members who are
Yeah.
really cheesed off about this because they're like, well, giving that much money to the SBC is tantamount to being a denomination. Like in my denomination, the Evangelical Covenant Church, churches are expected to tithe 10% upwards through the church leadership structure.
Yeah.
So for us to give an amount equal to that to, let's say, the Evangelical Free Church or the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, or maybe a church that doesn't have the word evangelical in the freaking name,
Yeah.
you'd be like, well, why are you giving that much money to a denomination?
Exactly. I was just about to say that. So the question becomes, why would you give that much money to another denomination without explicitly explaining why to your church attenders, members, supporters, whatever you want to call them, right? Like
Yeah.
you would think that there would be like, hey, like on any other weekend, you'd go, hey, we're doing a special giving to buy school supplies for the kids going back to school, right? You just put it out there and say, hey, no big deal, right? And I'm sure that for McLean Bible Church, that $375,000, somebody would like, it probably wasn't the end of the world to them just to kind of say, there's something going on, we're going to write a check. But when it's so clearly explained in your constitution that you are not supposed to be a member in membership with another denomination, don't you think it would raise some eyebrows when you send a big ass check to another denomination?
Yeah, it's just like the fact that it's in your church's constitution and bylaws that you are to remain non-denominational. That's kind of a crazy thing to me to have be ensconced in that document.
Yeah, right.
I mean, because like even my church, our bylaws, our constitution would allow us to leave the denomination should we want. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why this is like this, but I completely get it, where they're coming from. It's like, okay, we want to remain non-denominational or non-affiliated with a denomination. And
Yeah.
I forget, it was somebody like from the executive of the SBC had stated, it's like, well, no, don't worry about it because, McLean Bible Church isn't a member. They're just, they're
Yeah.
a partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's potato.
Right. And once again, like you have to ask the question, a partner to what? Because like on the one hand, if you like say something like at McLean Bible Church, we desperately want to do something like support all the people who, I don't know, I'm just going to pull an idea out of my head. We want to support all the people who've been relocated for their homes because of the war in Ukraine, right? So that's in our heart, but we're not necessarily set up to do it well. But we know that we have brothers and sisters over in the SBC who are set up to do something like that well. So instead of us reinventing the wheel, we are just going to cut a check and ask them to use this money to do that thing, right? It takes all of 2 minutes to explain. So it kind of begs the question, why didn't you explain it? What's the quid pro quo here, right? You're giving the SBC $375,000. A, what are they getting for their money? And B, what are you getting back in return? And the fact that nobody wants to talk about it is what kind of puts everybody's antennas up and kind of goes, well, that's suspicious.
Yeah, like we always come to these things. Okay, so how does this break the church, right? And it's like, well, where do I start?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a toughie because you were kind of brought up already. It's like the church leadership had been opaque enough with what they were doing with the money that nobody knew enough to like even have their complaint resolved.
Right.
That's just kind of an absurdity on its own because it's like, well, we're not supposed to give money to a denomination. Like, what did you do? It's like, well, we gave it not to the denomination. It was designated for this relief effort or something. It's like,
or whatever it was that nobody knows about. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 5 seconds to explain would have prevented this. And that's just the beginning to me. And it's like, and $375,000 is for even a good sized church, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, even if your church has like a couple thousand people, that's a good chunk of change.
Yeah.
So it's like, you do need that explanation. Like, what is it about the SBC that they're doing that it's worth that much money from us?
Right. And I think it's funny. So you had a great quote that you pulled out of this article where the leadership of McLean Bible Church, instead of actually like explaining the situation, they tried to turn around and put the blame on these 6 people, saying, we're grieved that our brothers and sisters are still choosing to file lawsuits rather than meet with us. Well, some of these people aren't your brothers and sisters anymore. They left. They were so done with all the backhandedness and all the obfuscations and all the having to beg for information. You shouldn't have to beg for information at a church. Information should flow freely, right?
It should. And I love like that word grieved too. It's like, we are
grieved.
It's like, oh, I'm getting the vapors.
Make me feel clumped.
But I get it. But at the same time, you're grieved that they can't come to you and talk.
But they tried already. That's the thing. They came to you, whether it was 1 person or 6 people or 100 people, said, hey, what are you doing with this money? And what gives you the right to use it this way? And the leadership of the church said, well, we're the leaders and this is what we're doing. So sit down and shut up and, enjoy your free coffee.
Yeah. And like, I guess it'd be like how this breaks the church. Point number 2.
Yeah.
Is going to be church leadership. All too often, how many freaking articles, headlines have we seen that is about church leadership being, well, because I can sit down, shut up, and be a good little monkey.
Yep.
It's like, no, I can just about guarantee. And I say that, and I might be completely wrong, but unfortunately, this is the pattern that churches, at least in our country, right, has kind of laid out, is that church leadership makes the decision and we don't have to answer to, to the likes of you.
Right.
It's terrible. No, church leadership, I'm in the leadership of my church. We need to have an answer.
Yeah.
We have every obligation to explain ourselves and our decisions. There are times in meetings where we end up taking time just to figure out, like, is this something we need to tell the congregation about? If we do this, is this going to like come back to us like, why didn't you tell us about this? Because we have to be concerned about that. That's part of being a leader.
Yeah. You and I have been in the church leadership sphere for years. And there's a similarity from leadership team to leadership team to leadership team to leadership team. They see the church as a body and they see themselves, the leadership team, as the head. It's like, no, you're not the head of the body. Jesus is the head of the body.
Right.
Now.
Small detail, minor detail.
Now, you as leaders are people maybe you've had formal training. Maybe you've had an abundance of training. Maybe you've had a lifetime of experience that qualifies you for leadership, right? So there's definitely a set of attributes that specifically explain why it is that you can inhabit that position of leadership. But just because you're the leader does not mean that you get to do whatever you want, right? Just because the hand can't, like the brain tells the hand what to do, not the hand telling the brain what to do. The leaders are not the brain. The leaders would be more like maybe, I don't know, the liver or the spleen or the kidneys or the heart and lungs, right? But not the brain. That's Jesus.
The spinal cord,
leaders
perhaps.
the leaders keep forgetting their place, and they keep going like, yeah, we can just spend money and not explain it. Well, yes, you can, but why would you be surprised when somebody actually asks the question why?
Yeah, and especially in that situation where you have like your bylaws state specifically you cannot affiliate with a denomination.
Yeah.
Then doing any giving through a denomination is, you should know right then and there, like, no, we have to be able to justify this very easily and simply and quickly, because if the explanation is too convoluted, then nobody's going to believe you anyway.
Right. Yeah, like that seems to be like Logic 101. If your church has a predisposition bias against being part of a denomination, then you need to know that when you partner with a major denomination, you are going against the grain of the bias of your own church. And that is going to ruffle some feathers, whether you like it or not. And so you would think that maybe a little bit of preparation before you cut the check would have been in order.
Yeah, I'm going to like kind of move on. Like there's like another thing here that like we can side a little bit with the church that says like we agree that they're suing us, because 1 Corinthians chapter 6, it all goes into that. And he's just like, hey, there shouldn't be any kind of lawsuits among like, isn't there somebody there that can like judge between you?
Yeah.
And the answer here is, well, No, because the leadership are being douchebags.
Yeah. It really is a douchey move to kind of do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there has to be, and here's the thing, kind of want to say there has to be something you can do, but maybe there's not, because this is one of the big shortcomings of non-denominational churches, is if your church leadership does something janky, who do you have to complain to? And the answer is probably nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if it was like a church plant from Acts 29 is a big church planting organization, right? Like maybe you can go to them and make a complaint, but ultimately the churches they're not owned by the denomination. Maybe owns a bad word, but there is no oversight.
Yeah.
And so perhaps the issue is a combination of things where this lawsuit being done, they are probably unhappy that they're doing it too, because we know what Paul has clearly written in scripture, but maybe this is the only recourse they have specifically for like that recurrent problem of leadership who just won't listen, so that there is nobody else to take it to.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then I guess how much does like a church's bylaws constitute a contract to the attendees of the church?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm not even sure how that works. It kind of confused me.
Yeah, it seems to me like I think your first instinct was really right. That look, if we can't get these leaders to tell us what's going on within the safe confines of our own church, then we need to find some mechanism of explaining what the heck's going on. So if we've got to bring them into the courtroom to get an explanation, and at least the explanation's out, and everybody in the church can make up their mind for themselves then, whether or not this was an appropriate use of funds, right?
Yeah.
Can I throw an idea by you and you tell me if I'm crazy or not?
I'll happily tell you if you're crazy.
Okay, so theology from The West Wing, the TV show, okay? So there's a great quote there's a mini plot that happens in one of the seasons where the president has to consider the pros and cons of assassinating another government's politician. And one of the things he says is when you no longer work within the confines of the law, you lose the protection of the law, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of feeling like that applies to this. Like you have these leaders who think they're above the law and thinking that everybody in their church is too lazy and or too stupid to do anything about it. And, not thinking that there are 6 people who are going to get to the answers one way or the other. And so once the answer comes out, like, does it become a situation of, well, you played stupid games, now you win stupid prizes, and all the blowback that comes as a result, you deserve every bit of it.
I don't think you're insane at all. I mean, other than mentioning West Wing, perhaps. I mean, somewhere Aaron Sorkin is becoming aroused because you brought up his show.
Probably true. Yes.
Yeah, but like it does go to show the extent to which relationships in this church must be broken for this to be what's going on right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
And that's, I think, the big keys. That central hinge for me is relationship. It's relationships from leadership, within leadership, between leadership and laity, between laity and then leadership and its own rules. So it's like everything is so up in the air and goofy. It's like, and then of course, like when churches can't functionally, right? Yeah. So it's like, or like, in other words, to bring it back to the Apostle Paul, it's like, look, when you behave like the heathens do, like you're just giving everybody reason to sit there and say that God is worthless.
Yeah.
That Jesus isn't who he says he is, because you can't do what he says to do. And that's, so I guess that's all I could add to it right now.
Yeah, it's been your major contribution since the inception of this podcast. You're the one who came up with the idea of radical transparency and radical accountability. Like that's all been you since the very beginning. And if that were ever a situation where this applies, it is to the leadership of McLean Bible Church. So hopefully in this mess that they've created, hopefully maybe a little bit of introspection and humility enters the picture. Maybe even some healing of relationships, God forbid.
Yeah, you know what? Only time will tell.
Absolutely. Well, hey, listen, we're Churches Lame. We talk about crazy things that churches do that break the entire body. Mark and I are 2 guys who love the church, who are just trying to put together a real list of reasons, episode by episode, why people may not take the church as seriously as they once used to. We would love for you to add your voice to the conversation. I'm on YouTube. By all means, hit those thumbs up, thumbs down, and comments, and subscribe, and click all those buttons. And if you're a listener of the podcast, shoot us an email, churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com. And if you have a chance, please go to your Apple Podcast app and add Churches Lame to your list of podcasts that you listen to.
And with that, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.